It is said that every time we fight life or reality, we lose. So, what's our alternative instead of fighting? Many people talk about the healing and transformational power of surrender. But what does surrender really mean? How do we engage that? And what can it do for us? Well, that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Hi, I'm Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein, and welcome to the Wired for Wellbeing podcast, where each week we explore how adopting a nervous system perspective can transform the way you live, love, and relate. And I'm also joined each week by my dear friend and producer, Steve Lissar. Steve, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Jeffrey. Hey, everybody. I'm doing well today. How are you doing, Jeffrey? Did you have a good weekend?
Yes, I did, thank you. I started playing with watercolors.
Lovely. Lovely. I can't wait to feature your watercolors on our podcast.
Yes. Especially the audio version. That'll be a hit.
They'll appreciate it.
Yeah. So, what do you have for us today?
Well, I have a written question from Linda that I'm going to read and we can discuss. But Jeffrey, before I get into that, I just also want to let people know early on that if they have a question, that they can send it in via our phone number, 866-357-5156. There's a place you can go there, friends, and leave a voicemail, and we'll bring your question. And we also have instructions in the show notes, and we'll kind of repeat those towards the end of the podcast if leaving a voicemail isn't an option. So right off the bat, if you have a question, we'd love to get it. But Jeffrey, let's get right into Linda's question.
Great.
Linda writes, I spent my entire life pressed against the screen door of ambivalence, unsure which was more frightening, living indoors with my mentally ill, traumatized immigrant mother, or venturing outdoors into a world she taught me to fear. The memory of no safe place has returned following two serious falls in 1 year, one outside the house and the other inside, what Linda describes as her refuge, her home. Those experiences, Linda continues, plus facing my looming mortality at 83 with a parade of old, close friends dying in rapid succession, has left me feeling in free fall with no safe place. Learning to accept and surrender to the way things are, the realities of life, is likely the biggest, perhaps only important lesson facing me now. But I don't know how to get there. And I'm so very tired of fighting for my life, but still cherish life and don't want to give up. I'd love to hear you share your wisdom on the following questions. What does it mean to surrender? How is it different than giving up the struggle when fighting for one's life is necessary? How do I find enough trust in myself and the universe to let go and lean into the reality of things when I never had a basic trust to begin with? And her final question, does surrender happen by grace, or can we cultivate the conditions for it? Now, Jeffrey, there's a lot of big, fascinating questions to focus on here. Before we're gonna take them one by one, friends. We're gonna kind of unpack all of this. But Jeffrey, maybe you can just start by helping us maybe understand from your perspective where Linda is arriving with this question before we kind of go into her specific questions, like how she's showing up with this question.
Well, there's a couple things, many things that actually pop for me. One of the things is that Linda shared with us her early life experience. And her early life experience was one of no safe place. So most of her life, she's probably been fearful, absorbing a good deal of that from her mother. And also trying to find her own way, not be as confined as her mother is, but also make her way in the world and in relationships. So that's kind of been a theme for her. And it feels like even these many decades later, that theme is still alive in her body and in the way that her nervous system may fear change or fight changes, as we all do. But one thing I just want to underline with this is that one of the tolls that our nervous system takes is protective strategies that it learned in childhood. It just usually continues until we've done this whole life. Unless we actually do something directly to shift that trajectory, our nervous system will still help us refrain or pull back from living a full life or to live life without fear. So that's one thing that pops for me too. The other thing is that Linda is speaking to something that we all face. I mean, like I said in the opening, every time we fight reality, we lose, but all of us fight reality. I don't want it to rain today. I don't want it to be this cold. I want this person to like me more. I want to get paid more. I don't want to have this problem with my knee. I don't want to have this problem with aging. Whatever it is, we wish, and this is a human condition, we wish that circumstances were different, right? If our circumstances are not bringing us pure happiness and joy and satisfaction, which very few circumstances bring, we would usually want to fight it and adjust it and make it closer to our druthers, how we'd like things to be. Again, this is so normal for all of us. Linda right now is facing a pretty intense onslaught. So this issue has probably been around in her life and body for many, many years. But it's also beginning to hit her on many different levels, perhaps even more impactfully, as she's in her 83rd year. And we know that at that age, we have more yesterdays than we have tomorrows. And so it's very sobering, and it can also be frightening. And then along the way, she's experiencing two major, major stressors for anyone's nervous system. Number one is a series of injuries, one happening outside her home, right? Who'd be kind of like leaving her mom and moving out in the world, and she fell and was injured, and that required, caretaking. And then also another event where she fell inside her home. And I think she said something about like it's her sanctuary or refuge. A place that felt safe now becomes suddenly something that feels less safe, a little bit more dangerous or risky. So this is also stressing Linda because one of the places she could reliably feel safe would be her refuge, her place to live. And this latest fall has begun to even bring that a little into question. So it's almost in some ways, Steve, like she's doing a life review, right? And trying to figure out, how do I get out of this alive? Or how would I get out of this with less fighting, even though at this age and with these health concerns, I have to kind of fight for my life. I have to keep working to get well or get the medical attention I need and to push myself to do whatever it is, physical therapy or rehab. So there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of engagement that's still required of her. But she's also aware, perhaps intuitively, at a deeper wisdom level, that something is being asked of her. And I agree with her. I think that right now, especially at that age and stage, we are invited, perhaps ever more clearly than we've been invited before, to begin to release the tendency to need things to be different than how they are.
And I hear in Linda's question a lot of strength as well, because on one hand, there's part of her that wants to give up, right? That wants to stop fighting. And then there's another part of her that wrote this question and wants to fight and wants at least a resolution.
Right. But she also mentioned there, that's a great point you bring up. She also mentioned that she cherishes life. So she's aware of the pain, the loss, the limitations, old age, illness, death, the things that set Buddha on his lifelong quest to understand and heal suffering. So she's aware of all those, but she's also aware that there is a part of her, and I love this, that cherishes life, right? She is still in touch with a part of her that wants to keep living, that loves life, loves what it can bring to her. And this coexists, right, alongside another part of her, probably younger and more influenced, more shaped by her past with her mom, that makes her more fearful and more exhausted. And the feeling that, I imagine, this probably is telling a story more about me than her, but I think that all of us also get afraid that, what if I'm the last one standing? What if all my friends die or my family dies, or siblings or children or elders, and feeling more and more alone, especially for people who have had during their life um, ambivalent or anxious attachments. And for example, her mom, because of her anxiety and her psychotic issues, was probably not really able to connect fully with Linda, her daughter, or to see Linda as a separate human being. So Linda has not gotten reflected back to her by some important relationships, her strength, her value, um, and her basic goodness, which we all have, but mostly overlooked. So it feels like it's particularly a strong dynamic. And I also feel like this is a courageous question. It's not just a good question, it's also a courageous question because it's really pointing us to the edge of where she is. So I also loved her illumination of the several questions because she really truly is invested in changing them. She's just looking for a place to start.
So let's start down that list of questions with Linda's experience as sort of our context here. And the first one she brings up is this idea of surrender. And I think surrender can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, Jeffrey, what definition of surrender do you want us to kind of hold and play with in this context? And then we'll kind of talk specifically about Linda. Just let's kind of bring everybody into this idea.
Okay. So, what I do not mean about surrender is giving up, like surrendering in warfare or in a fight. Okay, I give up, you win, right? It's not that. It's not a win-lose dynamic. But I can either be fighting my experience, trying to desperately cling on to how I felt 3 weeks ago instead of how I feel right now, or to cling back to some moment of happiness and strive to get back there, right? It's about allowing. And so I often use surrender and allowing interchangeably, that we are allowing ourselves to meet life as it's facing us in reality, not in our necessarily wishes for how it would be different. That's human to have those, right? That's totally normal. We're all going to have those. But if we get stuck in kind of insisting and pushing for life to not be this way, but rather to be that way, we're fighting how things are. And that is always, always a recipe for disappointment and pain. And also, because it engages us in this fight against how things are, we close down a lot of our energy. And a lot of our awareness and energy is spent trying to change or transform the present sometime in the future, instead of actually being able to be with our life in this moment. So surrender is not giving up, but it is choosing not to necessarily fight how things are, but to try to meet how things are right now, because that is reality. It's like once I blow out a tire, if I'm traveling, right, I can wish it didn't happen. I can get all angry that it happened. I can insist it shouldn't happen and how unfair it is. That's all good feelings. I mean, so many people have those. But the idea is that doesn't change the flat tire. And what's going to happen is the first arrow of suffering is my flat tire. The second arrow, the self-inflicted arrow, is, oh, this is horrible and it's going to make me late. People are going to be upset with me and I'm upset with me. And why didn't I leave earlier? And all these other things that create additional suffering because we're fighting the way things are. As an aside, I had this great experience. I'd be in my teens. I was going camping with a friend. We were driving out of the Washington, D.C. area into Virginia, and my radiator blew over, overheated, and so I had to stop the car. And usually, like in those days, I wanted to get to the campgrounds or the hiking trail at a certain time, and so time was kind of the essence, and usually I would feel this overwhelming pressure to try to get there, and an overwhelming rage at being thwarted. And this day, for no reason of its own, I just approached it differently. It wasn't intentional, but I actually just said, okay, well, this is what's happening and I'll deal with it. I don't even remember it being so articulated as much as it was a feeling that this is not how I'd like it to go, but this is how it is, and I'm going to deal with it so we can keep moving on. I didn't ruin the day. I didn't ruin the time with my friend, which I could have in the past, being so angry and so sulky and resentful about it that I would have been horrible company. So that was one of the first times that I learned in my own experience that not fighting something, but allowing reality to be. And then, of course, we can interact with it. Like, just because reality is happening, you've driven out of your lane and you're heading towards a truck, doesn't mean you should steer yourself back into your lane. But it does mean that while we can take care of ourselves, part of it is also knowing in this moment, what can I actually change? Is it any good to rage at what already happened? And so learning to adopt this is difficult because our strategies, especially, let me go back to Linda in this case in particular. Linda grew up with a lot of flight energy, right? Because she had a very anxious, very fearful mom who was probably almost always in sympathetic flight activation, fearful, avoidance, running away. And Linda's nervous system probably adapted that. So she has a, a very strong sensitivity probably to things that cause her to feel unsafe and therefore to feel anxious. So one of the things that stands in the way of allowing, right, is that when we get anxious, we want to leave the situation. We want to run away from it. We don't want it to be true. Again, a totally normal response for the nervous system. But in this moment, it actually doesn't make us safer. It prolongs and deepens our suffering. So the concept of surrender, the concept of letting go, the concept of trying to meet what's happening and then figure out what we actually can do, what is being called for us in this moment. Well, that day I had to find a way to get to a gas station and get water and come back to the car and fill it up and then drive the car in and get the radiator patched. It was several steps. It was frustrating, but I could engage in that and engage in that relatively okay and still be able to have conversation and joke with my friend instead of the old way would have been, I would have been so angry. I'd be sulking, and I wouldn't be capable of having an enjoyable moment because I was so consumed by my anger or my fear of being late or the unfairness of things. So I think that Linda and many of our listeners can struggle with the way their nervous systems push them into these elevated states of fighting what is.
I want to tag onto it a bit because as you've been sharing all of this, I've sort of been sitting with this idea of fighting reality. And I think there's something in the fight that feels productive, like we're doing something, like might not be the right thing to do, but we're an active participant in this universal dance that in reality, in some ways, we're bystanders in. That and I'm going to need some help with the language here, but like fighting almost feels like a way for us to falsely claim autonomy or agency. I don't what are your thoughts on that, or how do you kind of put that into context of this like survival instinct? That's what she even shares, like fighting for my life, like it's almost like a survival instinct
It
that
is.
I think I'm trying to illuminate as well.
I think it is. And I think that, fight energy comes up for us when we want to pummel or get the person or object out of our way. We want to use strength for that. Unfortunately, most of the time, when we feel this fight energy, it's kind of trapped inside of us. It's like we're roiling and boiling on the inside, right? It doesn't change reality. But I get what you say too. It's like when things have happened that I don't want, I know that an impulse in me is, I don't want this to be, and I don't want to settle for this. I'm not going to settle for this. As if the universe could give a crap about what I'm going to settle for and not settle for. But I'm saying over here, I'm not going to settle for this. This is not okay. And yeah, I can do that. We can all do that. We all have done that. But, Steve, after you fought something, right? Do you ever feel any better?
I think there are some ways, Jeffrey, that I may have felt better because I felt like I was actively doing something, but the reality is like it didn't make a difference. So maybe I released the neurochemicals that made me feel a little bit better for that moment, but I didn't change anything. I didn't resolve it. I just suffered more.
Right. So part of it is also seeing what the fruits of our labors are, whether it helps us move towards a resolution or whether it further dysregulates. From my experience, when I fight something, while I may feel like, okay, I'm engaging in this, I'm fighting, I'm not just, sitting down and being run over by it, it absolutely increases my own dysregulation. Like the first arrow is the radiator not working or falling. The second arrow is lambasting ourselves, or then automatically becoming even more afraid of the danger that's all around us, which again, for Linda's nervous system would make perfect sense to go there. But what we talk about here on the podcast is trying to understand what our nervous system is doing and where it's trying to lead us and how we can work with it to be a little bit less on autopilot, a little less on just responding because we're just reacting to the situation instead of being able to find in it how can we still be here and present and not be drowning in it, but work with it, change it, meet it, do something, right? And I don't mean change the circumstances, but change something that needs to be changed, like fix the radiator or go to physical therapy or something else.
And I think this is a really important lens to bring into this conversation because the great teachers talk about surrender. And I've read any number of books or listened to any number of teachings where we talk, the teacher is exploring this idea of surrender. But the perspective that you offer and your work offers is that our nervous system might not be in a place to do that immediately. Where I want to jump to here, Jeffrey, is like from a non-dual perspective and from a nervous system perspective, why is surrender so difficult, or what gets in the way? What I want to lead to is the idea of trust. But before we get to trust, I kind of want to unpack this, like, why is it so hard?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but I do think that partly culturally, especially in Western societies, where we have elevated rational thought and a strong individualistic response to life, we tend to operate predominantly in those two channels. I should be able to figure out something. I should be able to make this different. And I have enough resources and strength. I'm going to fight this. And again, it's not a bad response. It's not. It's a human response. But again, I can try to fight cancer. Doesn't mean I just accept it and lay down. I can allow myself to have cancer, but I can also allow myself to engage in all types of self-care behavior that will prolong my life or heal my illness. Doesn't mean I just let the cancer devour me. But if I'm trying to do treatment for cancer and also making myself enraged at this enemy or ashamed, what have I done? What did I do to deserve this cancer? Did I smoke? Did I eat the wrong things? Did I drink water out of plastic bottles? How did I do this to myself? And I'm mad at myself for this happening. I'm mad at God for letting this happening. I'm mad at my parents for the genetics. And we get angry and we want to fight all these different things. So I think that, especially because of cultural conditioning and our nervous system prevalence to fight what we see as a threat. So we could say that Linda's nervous system is seeing each of these things, perceiving each of these things as a threat to her safety. The falling and the losing, the successive deaths of dear friends and associates she's experienced over the last recent past are probably all threatening her sense of safety and security, and it would for anyone. Because I think that kind of not everybody has this fear, but most people have some level of fear of death, either for what will happen to them or the sense of loss. When I die, I lose everything: friends, family, possessions, my pet. I'm gone. And that's a sobering and sad piece. But especially, let's take a little detour here. If my nervous system has always found some safety in attachment, in relationship, and then important people who have had important relationships with are passing away, I'm going to feel like my options to be co-regulate, to feel safe in relationship, to feel understood and companioned in some way is going to be reduced or stopped totally if I'm the last one standing, or if I have less and less people that can offer me that kind of connection that I'm still able to offer back. So again, it brings out deep, deep fears, old fears, and that they have controlled a large part of our life, maybe that Linda's been conscious of and just becoming much more conscious of it now, or maybe some things are becoming conscious of that she's never kind of glimpsed before. But in either way, I also see Linda at this crossroad, right? She has a lot of pain, she has a lot of vulnerability, but she's also coming in with like, what is this message for me? What am I expected to learn? And what she says is, I think the only thing I can make of this is like surrendering and letting go. So she's already intuiting from the inside that there's something she needs to feel more at peace, more together, less fragmented, less torn apart on the inside, if she can come to some peace and some allowing of current situations and living within them versus hating that anything is happening at all, like time moving forward, people getting sick or falling.
How do we start to yeah, to trust and honor and have confidence in that surrender?
Well, I don't think we can have trust or confidence in it until we experience it. Because before we experience it, it's just a concept, it's just a thought, it's an idea. And, you know, I mean, that's kind of worth nothing, right? Like I have a thought, I wish I could fly. That doesn't really get me to fly. I'd like to feel safe in flying. I'm not sure I'm going to feel safe in flying. We're going to have all these thoughts until I have an experience that actually helps me feel, see, experience, or live being in touch with that quality. I won't believe it or know that it's even possible unless I actually begin to experience it for myself.
What occurs to me in that is particularly what Linda's bumping up against, some very big life transitions and some very difficult life transitions, that having that experience of that is pretty far away. So are there smaller experiences of that trust? Like, can we start to microdose trust so that
I wouldn't emphasize the trust. See, I think that that'll come.
so the trust is a byproduct?
Trust is a byproduct experience that leads you to see, oh, when I don't fight this, I actually feel easier. I feel less torn up inside. I feel like I can meet what's coming on without this extra current of what have I done wrong? What should I do? What should I have done? And a kind of alarm and panic that can arise with that. If I can see that, yeah, for example, it breaks my heart, shatters my heart that my dear, beloved long-term friends are passing away. And again, if we're lucky enough to live a longer life, this will unfortunately be part of the reality. We will outlive friends and some family members. It just happens. It's not easy. But it is part of continuing to live, right? Is that being alive is not a get out of jail free card for pain, for illness, or for death. We are going to experience them. So on a smaller level, right, when our car blows out a tire, when a friend cancels at the last minute, or when a restaurant that we've been looking forward to 2 months, we can have lunch with a dear friend, we get there and they're closed for good. These are things of reality, and they're going to cause feeling, grief or upset, loss. But there's a difference between meeting those feelings and the energy of fighting what is. And we're going to know the difference. So let's back up. You said, well, how do we start this? So to actually engage in the process of surrender, letting go, allowing, we first need to notice and name what we are doing. So we need to become aware when we're fighting a situation, when we're angry and reactive because this happened or that happened. And just by naming and noticing, we're creating a teeny pause and a little bit of space to be able to see what we're doing instead of being so identified and hijacked by what we're doing that we're not even paying attention to. We're just in the middle of the storm. But if I can see, wow, I'm really kind of pissed off and tense about this, I'm naming and noticing. And then I can ask myself this question: is this level of fight, of wanting to fight what is this necessary? And we don't try to analyze for an answer. We just kind of sit with that and see what comes up in terms of feel. And then we may be able to ask a second question. Is there a way that I could meet this that would cause me less pain? Now, for example, meeting your body after a fall is going to be painful, to be in touch with your body. But we can make the pain worse by then blaming ourselves for the fall or extending the idea, now I'm going to fall everywhere, or nowhere is safe. When we begin to extend from the incident to now what it means for my reality, my life going forward, that's something that may not at all be necessary and actually is how the state and fear begins to narrow and constrict our life. So part of it is noticing what we're doing, how much fight, how much we're resisting, how much we are trying to make the situation go away, and ask if that level of fear, anger, frustration is actually necessary or helpful. And the third place we can go, and again, it helps to have one or two toes in regulation for this, because if we're just fuming, we're not going to find very many words or insights outside the fuming. We need to settle a little bit towards regulation so that we can access our capacity to sort things out. We lose our capacity to sort things out when we're gripped by fear, by anger, or by shutdown and collapse.
I'm looking at Linda's last question here, and my mind is sort of being flooded with the nature of what's going on for all of us. So Linda's last question is, does surrender happen by grace, or can we cultivate the conditions for it? And what I'm pulling away is it sounds like it's both, right? There's this worldly reality of we do the work and we come back to our experience and we're continuing to cultivate the resources in us to return and see what's there and ask the questions. But I'm also hearing another side of it that might be like a universal truth that through that experience, this grace arises. We don't actively create it. And I'm really struggling with this two levels of this question, that there's a worldly side of surrender and a um, kind of like, universal side of surrender that don't seem to outwardly meet but end at the same place. I didn't ask you a question. I just just shared what was on my mind of trying to hold. There are two sides of this very complex situation that don't seem like they fit together sometimes.
So I don't think it's an either or, like you. I don't think it's either our own volition and will or grace. I think that there is a way that as we attune to something in us, deeper than our nervous system, we can actually get in touch with an original sense of wholeness or capacity that we lose touch with often when we are identified with our stories and our defenses and our projections or protections against pain, our own pain or others, against people being angry with us or we being angry at them. So there's a big, big piece that uh, we're responsible for beginning to relate a little differently. Now, I mentioned before a few of the internal questions we can ask. But there's another way of working towards surrender. And that's working with the body. Anytime that we're fighting anything, an idea, a feeling, another person, or something we're reading in the news, our body will contract and tense. It's inevitable. Some part of your body, maybe not all of it, maybe your chest, maybe your shoulders, maybe the area around your heart, maybe the throat will tighten. You'll get a headache. There'll be tension in the head. Your low back might cinch up. But anytime we access fight or flight energy from the nervous system, we are going to have a physical contraction, a tightening. So if I become aware I'm really fighting my flat tire or my overheated radiator, I could turn my awareness to try to locate in my body what's bracing. Where is that constriction or bracing or tension being held the most? Where is it most noticeable? For me, not all the times, but often it's in my stomach. My abdominal muscles, and they will tense as I get into fight or flight energy. So one of the ways of working towards surrender, non-intellectual, is to direct our awareness back into the regions of contraction, of tension, and to consciously work through the body with our awareness to be able to release, to soften, to unwind that constriction and tension. As we do that, we shift away from fight. We shift more towards regulation, and we shift more towards allowing. And so going through the body for me is actually a preferred way of doing it, because my head speaks too much all the time. And so I can somehow even often get more lost, because remember, we've said state drives story. So if I'm in an angry state, I'm going to have an angry story. If I'm in a fearful state, I'm going to have a fearful story. When I am able to identify and soften my contraction, my story shifts because my state shifts. All of a sudden, instead of being all geared up and worried about protecting me, I'm actually beginning to access more of me. Not just the part that I shrunk down to that's furious that this is happening, but a larger slice of me, more of a complete slice of me, where I can be aware of my resistance and my rather that it not be this way, but also coming back to a sense of being our bodies, if we let them, can lead us to openings. They can lead us to a way of being with experience which doesn't automatically contract or fight it. So that's where working with the nervous system to get us towards regulation is the first step. Second step here is beginning to also notice the tendency to fight, and also be able to come back and be able to soothe and release, soften that energy of contraction. If we actually soften it in the body, it will change our experience. It will soften our state. It will soften our mood. It will soften the urgency or the intensity of anger or the heat of terror. It will soften them. And so just working with the body helps put us back towards regulation, but even more importantly, allows us to come in contact with much more resources like, well, I wonder what the best way is to deal with this, right? Who would I go see to talk about this? How would I ask for help about this? We don't usually get there when we're spending so much time knotted up and I don't want this to happen. This is overwhelming and it shouldn't happen to me and I can't deal with this and it's too much. Those are all understandable feelings. We may go through them. But the point is, if we get stuck in them, if we stay there, it's not helping us move, and it's actually unintentionally deepening our pain and suffering.
And I've also seen those moments in my life that when I create that shell, I close myself off to some powerful experiences that I've had that I don't think I would have been present for if I was stuck in the story or stuck wanting something to be changed. That was actually the act of surrendering and being present allowed me to see or experience or engage with something or have a connection that I would have totally closed off to otherwise.
That's a great point too. So let's talk a little bit about attention. Um, we have capacity as our intention to have a narrow focus, like a micro lens or macro lens, where we're getting really close to an image and looking for fine detail. And we also have the capacity for a wide angle focus, an open focus, where we're not so much concentrating on the vivid detail of one thing, but we're letting ourselves perceive the entirety of a scene, or the fullness of a scene. When we are defensively activated in fight, flight, or shutdown, our attention automatically narrows. It gets very constricted and it focuses in on the problem, the threat, whether it's external or whether it's internal. Shutdown and collapse, the threat is usually our feelings, and feeling so bad or ashamed, we have to get away from them. In fight or flight, it's usually something external. It can also be occasionally something that's internal with it. But the idea is our whole life, our whole reality, is reduced to this little laser beam of focus on the problem, the issue. And what you spoke about, Steve, is that when you move a little bit towards regulation, and this is what happens, our vision opens. Our attention is wider. And instead of just seeing the problem, we can see everything, like kind of like that example I was talking about. Somehow, when my radiator blew, instead of only focusing on the problem, I still focused and was able to hold, but I want to go camping. We're going to go camping. We're just going to be late for camping. I can adjust to that. I don't have to hate every second of this and fight every second of this. So don't believe everything you perceive when you're in fight, flight, or shutdown, because you're actually going to have a very narrowed focus of attention, and you will have much less access to being able to get curious about what's really needed. What can I do? Instead, we may feel like we're flailing. We have to do something and it's desperate. When we open our focus, when we shift our state, when we get a couple of toes in regulation, we have a wider view and we have less of this internal pressure that we have to act, we have to fight things and change things. And that is relieving. And that feels like grace, because we're suddenly opened again to life instead of being closed down and fighting.
Yeah, that's the grace that we're looking for. It's there all the time, and we're just not picking up on it.
Yes.
Jeffrey, I want to give you an opportunity here to speak to Linda one more time. But before we do that, before we kind of wrap this episode up and kind of touch in on the main points again, I just want to let our friends know that if you have a question that you'd like to send in, we have a voicemail set up. You can dial 866-357-5156 and send us a voicemail. And then in the show notes, we'll leave instructions if you're in an area code that doesn't allow you to access that phone number, or if you want to send an email and either type an email out like Linda did for us, or send a voice memo to us via email. Those will all be in the show notes, so you can go check those out there. So we do hope you send your questions in, because you're all what makes this experience incredibly rich. So thank you for that. Jeffrey, I want to kind of open up some space here before we wrap for you to really just connect in with Linda one more time on this theme and this topic.
So Linda is feeling what she's feeling quite naturally, because of her past history and because of her present circumstances and experience, both with falls and with the loss of friends and with her age. And she asked that question about how can I trust it? One part of it will be to see that when she's able to move a little bit towards regulation and open up and have less fight energy, but more of an allowing energy in her, she will begin to feel a very significant embodied response. She will relax a bit. She'll be more open. She won't feel as guarded in her heart. She won't be as absorbed in the sense of unsafety or danger everywhere. She will relax back to this sense of something that she also knows is her. That actually we feel more like us when we're a little bit more open than when we're laser closed. That's our a caricature of who we are, versus when we're more open and more able to have deeper contact with us, deeper contact with the world and others, there's a flowing of qualities in us that feels enriching, strong, vital, the opposite of what we feel when we're all closed down and fighting things as they are, or trying to run from things as they are. So part of this is understanding our nervous system's protective qualities. The other part is beginning to work with the body directly about letting go. And the first place that we can allow or let go is with the tension that's in the body. First, just noticing it when we're upset, when we're triggered, when we're fighting. And then to see if we can gently begin to unwind or loosen that constriction. Then that gives us more access to us and to life simultaneously. So I really appreciate, Linda, you writing this, and it's a very rich and layered question. And I think that it's something that each of us in our path at some point or another needs to consider and probably will face multiple times. We're trying to outline here a different way of meeting it than just keeping the status quo, right? And I know that your awareness already is serving you. So as best you can, trust that what you're noticing is valid, and then see if you can soften some of the internal nodding over it. I hope that's helpful.
Jeffrey, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And Linda, thank you for sending your question in and giving us this rich topic to unpack, not only for you, but for everybody. And friends out there, if you found something in here helpful, or you want to support this podcast and this content that we're putting out in the world, you can take the step of doing whatever is meaningful on the platform that you're watching or listening on, commenting, liking, subscribing, giving a 5-star review. All of those little bits help us continue to do this. So if that's in your heart and you are open and willing to support that way, that would mean the world to both myself and to Jeffrey. And Jeffrey, we've got some free things for people out there that they can go deeper into these teachings. You want to give us a sense of what those are and where they can go find them?
Sure. So currently, I have a free gift, about a 20-minute video on why do I keep feeling stuck? And it explores a bit of the dynamics and mechanisms of the nervous system, and also offers specific practices for when you find yourself in different states of the nervous system. You can obtain that by going to drjeffreyrutstein.com/links, LINKS, and then that'll take you to another page, and one of the links on that page is free gift. Click that, you're on your way. Steve, thank you so much for joining me in this and helping parse this really wonderful question and get to some good understandings here. So thank you.
Thank you for your time, Jeffrey, and your sharing. It's always so illuminating by bringing this nervous system perspective into these themes and these topics to help, I think, for me, get a layer deeper. So thank you for helping me get a layer deeper in these concepts, and for everybody getting sort of a layer deeper in these concepts. And I guess I'll catch you next week.
Sounds good. Remember, friends, this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for qualified healthcare. And so if you're struggling physically, emotionally, or mentally, please seek out a qualified healthcare practitioner. Thank you all for being here. Until next time, Bye for now.